Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Shares with me, Kim Britz, proudly powered by Leadership by Design.co, leading the charge with insights, information, and ultimately effective results. Joining me in today's marketing leadership segment, marketing communications expert and co-host, Craig Pagely. How are you doing, Craig?
Kevin, I'm great. Yeah, thank you. I'm bloody freezing out there. Hope you're keeping warm. I've got the heater on next to me here. It was 1 degrees when I went out to my meetings this morning, and yeah, definitely a frosty few days we've had. But yeah, apart from that, all good. Tommy, did you get to watch that great rugby game on the weekend?
Yes, Craig. I didn't know until you mentioned that Ireland was playing.
Yes.
I don't actively follow the rugby, but when it's these types of matches, I'm like completely invested. And what stood out for me about Saturday was like the biggest part, and I know you're going to mention about this, the intro and the anthem that was sung the way it was sung. And it just kind of prefaced how the hell we going to kick some ass, because like eventually when KB, I don't even know how to say that, Molitselanyane,
Yes, Motsilanyane.
when she sort of opened her arms and the crowd kind of filled that space, it was almost like a premonition of like, we're about to make the show happen.
I like that analogy. You're absolutely right. But no, Kevin, sure.
Right?
Yeah. I was at the game, totally overwhelmed by the atmosphere. And just to sort of set context, I was also at New Zealand played the Springboks for the first game post-COVID lockdown. So, yeah, in the same stadium, and it was really quite an incredible experience at that particular point in time. You know, people were hungry for some entertainment, been locked indoors for a couple of years and things like that. And it was really just wonderful to go and experience that. And the anthem on that day was something quite magnificent, just because we hadn't heard it for so long. But let me tell you, the atmosphere and energy that was in the stadium this past Saturday afternoon, early evening, was just something like I've never heard before. And I've never heard the national anthem sung with such passion and intensity in my life, Kevin. And again, you mentioned KB Motsilanyane, who, as it broke into the final chorus of the anthem, the crowd just built, crescendoed up to that point, and she was just being drowned out by her own voice there, and it was magnificent because she did what so many leading international artists do. You know, they point the microphone at the audience, and the audience continues, to close the song. And she did exactly that, and that stadium just erupted, Kevin. And she stood there with this magnificent, beaming smile across her face and proudness that she could have led the anthem to that point, that every single one of the 50-odd thousand people in that stadium would just continue and close it out. And when it was done, we stood there with this, the fireworks went off and there was the rapturous applause, but there was this sort of 15, 20 seconds of death quiet where everybody was just looking at each other with goosebumps and absolute emotion, going like, did we just do that? Yeah, so it sets a wonderful tone for a tough, complex, not pretty game, but exciting to see a different style of rugby sort of being experimented with on the day. And the Irish, strong, my goodness me, they really are. Phenomenal game. They played with their full heart and commitment, and yeah, unfortunately one or two calls went against them. May possibly have made a difference, but at the same time, we missed about 11 points in kicks, so it might not have made that big a difference. Nevertheless, a great game, and Saturday afternoon in Durban is going to be even more epic because they really want to level the series, and South Africa really wants to win the series because we haven't won a series against them in decades.
Craig, but what's because since then I've like watched some of the stuff online and some interviews with experts and specialists speaking about the approach, like the bomb squad, and the fact that they've incorporated this bomb squad into the team, and playing almost leading the way on how good rugby is played. And that's what some of the experts were saying online, and I was going, that's an interesting insight to kind of you know, and they were specifically mentioning, you know, Russie's approach to, you know, how he's really leaning into the new rules, with the new rules that's come out,
Yes.
and kind of going, okay, so how do we still attack? How do we still own the game? And absolutely, it wasn't you know, there was a lot of mistakes that happened and unnecessary, but you know, it's world-class rugby. It's like, you know, if you're ever going to have a reason to watch rugby, Saturday was a reason to to really love
And,
this.
and this coming Saturday will be another reason to. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was I you know, I'm not an avid, you know, sports watcher, but you know, when it comes to big international matches like this, it really does it impresses on why people are so passionate about a sport like this. It's amazing.
And just the incredible unity that the sport has brought South Africa. And after every big game, we hear the same thing as like, gosh, guys, sport really is a big unifying factor in this country. So maybe we should get all the parliamentarians to become sportsmen. Maybe we would have a lot more support of, you know, they'd need to work together as a team first, which I think would probably be the biggest challenge, because we know that can't happen.
Yeah,
Anyway.
and it requires immense discipline, right? So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And remember, you're doing it for the nation, not for yourself. Quite the opposite of what happens in Parliament at the moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry.
I know that we're going to unpack some of the final 3 metrics from the article you referenced last week. But before we do that, do you want to just give our listeners a bit of a report back on what we did cover?
Yeah, Kevin, thanks. As a reminder to our listeners, we reviewed the report I came across on McKinsey.com's People and Organizational Performance Practice page. The report was published as recently as the 15th of April this year and is titled Increasing Your Return on Talent, the Moves and Metrics That Matter. And you'll recall, Kevin, that the report notes that there are 5 actions that can truly transform an organization's talent system. It can help establish a culture of performance, and it most definitely can lead to an enhanced employee experience. And that really is what you want at the end of the day. So as a quick reminder, those 5 key actions that help in driving the talent agenda as follows. Focus on action 1 is build a skills-based strategic framework planning capability. Action 2 is create a hiring engine that brings in the right talent to fill critical roles. Action 3 is investing in learning and development. Action 4 is establish a stellar performance-oriented culture. And Action 5 is elevate HR's operating model to become a true talent steward.
Great. Yeah, I mean, and it's a fascinating, you know, when last week's show, when we were unpacking it, it really touches on some really, really awesome points, guys. So if you want to go and check it out, it's a last week's show. And Craig, so the rest of the metrics, what are we going to be chatting about today?
Yeah, so firstly, Kevin, you know, the McKinsey teams are always putting out incredible reports and content that is actually easy to digest. And really, when you put a bit of effort into it and lean into it, you can most definitely bring that into your organization. So the five actions that set those 5 actions actually set the context for a number of key points that we covered in more detail last week. And those particular points were talent plus productivity equals value, how to craft a high-performing talent system, identify who you need to win. We had great conversation around that, and then create a hiring engine to compete for talent. And the remaining 3 points that we're going to cover today, which are a bit longer, is firstly, focus learning and development programs on the highest return journeys. And I'm really, really looking forward to this particular conversation with you, because that's a great concept, the highest return journeys. Then make people and performance your organizational mantra, and then, you know, ending on that final point of turning HR into the talent steward.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we're going to touch on this, Craig, because, you know, even in large corporate, some corporates get it right. They get it right well. It's a well-oiled machine, but you know, an observation that's largely speaking for itself is it's slightly leaning to a tick box exercise, right?
Yes.
when you're kind of thinking of highest return journeys, it's like, what exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, and that's what I say, that term really stood out for me. It's a wonderful proposition to start the conversation with. So yeah, let's jump right in there. Focus learning and development programs on the highest return journeys, and the report notes the following around this concept, Kevin. McKinsey Talent Trends research indicates that skills development and the opportunity to apply those skills at work, as well as the chance for advancement, are among the top reasons employees decide to stay at their jobs. And all the more reason that the companies really must focus on this continuous learning, Kevin, as it's not only helping engage the workforce, but it also ensures that talent remain relevant and the companies keeping up with the changes and the ever-evolving needs of particularly technology's influence on the business environment. However, the sad reality is that despite significant spend in many areas of learning and development, many training programs aren't actually measurable and they aren't demonstrating an improvement in business performance. And yeah, again, this is where I say I look forward to your input here, because I'm sure you've probably seen in the work that you're doing some of that reality where the dial hasn't moved and you've been brought in to fix some of those programs.
Craig, well, what's interesting is, and that's why I'm saying, sometimes it becomes a tick box exercise, because some of the fundamentals that people forget, especially learning and development teams, and yes, I'm making a generalization, but what they often forget is you're still dealing with humans.
Yes.
And and as much as that sounds like a dumb thing to say or like an obvious thing to say, the fact is, as much as you're dealing with humans, you have to understand and know very well how to influence and impact behavior. Right? Just putting someone on a program, so what?
Yes.
What is the purpose and how does it drive success? And how do you retain that success if you're putting someone on a program in the first place? And what is the agenda and the support, or at least the vision for what it is you're enabling your company to do? And if that's not supported, it doesn't work well.
Absolutely, and just to build on it, Kevin, it goes without saying though that when done well, continuous learning definitely can address the core reasons for productivity loss. For instance, like when people don't have the right skills to deliver in a particular area or in their current roles, or they lack skills they need for the longer term success. So if you're not addressing those, it's going to grind to a halt right there. But this is why companies really should be identifying the capabilities that they need for the future, and they definitely have to start thinking about developing tailored skill-based learning journeys for their talent pool to remain relevant and best in class for today and into the future. And the key objective here is to focus on those specific journeys that produce the highest return, as this approach is often more cost effective than actually building traditional cohort or role-based journeys. So to read that particular line again is, the key objective is to focus on the specific journeys that produce the highest return, as this approach is often more cost-effective than building traditional cohort or role-based journeys. And another important point that we actually mentioned quite recently is that it's to find ways to reskill and equip employees to take on new roles. And this definitely helps in eliminating or reducing recruitment costs downstream. And the movement of skill across the organization really needs to be considered a lot more in detail. The report also references a great term, that of adaptive learning, which is a term I really want to recommend to teams that I work with in the employer brand EVP space. And what the report tells us about this term is that the most effective organizations encourage personalized adaptive learning, where employees are actually motivated to own their journey by deciding which skills and areas of expertise they want to focus on. And they're given feedback along the journey with coaching and peer learning opportunities, and they're then supported through these digital ecosystems that can actually help them track their progress over time. And what's really great about this approach, Kevin, is a beautiful paragraph directly from the report that states the following. When companies shift their cultures to be development focused, employees tend to feel more productive, more adaptable, and valuable, helping with attraction and retention rates over the long term. And again, how often we talk about just demonstrating the value and reward for employees that are achieving. And that's when they start to feel more valuable, and therefore lean more into the job, and they become more profitable or contribute more to the bottom line.
Craig, just to give you a practical, like some feedback from my context is, currently I'm working with a very large organization that's looked at their leadership, or specialists, not leadership, but specialists. And their specialists are people like IT specialists, market research specialists. We look at actuaries and accountants, right? And people that don't, the program in itself has been specifically been put together to kind of go, okay, we know that you're a specialist. How do we give you practical and support your journey as a leader within this environment, so that you also understand that, you know, that high return journey that you referenced earlier is really what we're aiming to do here. And this company has literally gone and said, let's go and create a program that supports specialists in a leadership capacity.
Yep,
so, you know,
superb.
they may not have teams, they may not have people that report to them. What this company is actually looking at is going, leadership in itself is actually a skill. You know, whether you're leading self or whether you're leading people, essentially what we need is more leaders, right? And you know, we've done this. This is the 4th year that we're doing this actual program, and the turnaround, the feedback, the evidence of how this has impacted that environment. I mean, we were showcasing, you know, the new program to the guys, and we had one of the last year's delegates on the program, and he's taken so many strides in his own leadership capacity. He's been on radio, he's been on TV, he's published insights specifically in what he does, right? But suddenly this man is, you know, shining in a way that he didn't even think he would, right?
That's fantastic.
On the approach of how do we design and develop high return journeys for our people to make sure that, you know, in a year from now, in 6 months from now, we have an actual turnaround and we see the impact that, you know, having a good learning and development option for our teams and our business is actually supporting where we're going, what we're doing, and who we are.
And Kevin, that all comes out of a learning culture, and this is where the report really references something quite interesting. Where, yeah, in the report there was a lovely link to a specific article on the topic of learning, and what I took out were 2 or 3 paragraphs from that. And the first one notes this: a vibrant learning culture sounds appealing, doesn't it? Focus on learning renewal attracts and generates an engaged, productive, and loyal workforce. Learning is also critical for an organization's ability to influence, adapt to market conditions, and thrive over the long run. It's therefore not surprising that numerous organizations are actively creating or planning to adopt a culture of lifelong learning. They recognize the connection between inspiring employees to learn continuously and keeping the organization in step with today's pace of change. Those that get it right will achieve the competitive talent advantage necessary for success. And what I like about the article is that, you know, it then goes into 3 critical attributes of a learning organization, which I'll pick up on now. But firstly, the article is titled, "Is Your Organization Harnessing the Proven Power of Learning?" The article was written by Stacey Ditch, Bonnie Dowling, and Nicola Nielsen, and was published on the 27th of August 2020. So quite a while ago, but just what really fascinates me is the relevance of these 3 critical attributes, which still have absolute relevance today, Kevin. The first being essential learning. So organizations make learning essential by building it into their strategic, financial, and talent planning process. So what's interesting there is bringing the financial pillar into the conversation, and they acknowledge that the direct correlation between skill, talent, and business value, and they factor this into their governance model and vision. These organizations also recognize the importance of business taking ownership for learning strategy, not leaving it to HR, but the entire business across the leadership realm taking ownership of the leadership strategy, and they work alongside learning and development to realize the vision and ensure the organization maximizes its impact. The second of the critical attributes is meaningful learning. Yeah, organizations make learning meaningful by enabling and promoting individual choice and self-directed, self-determined learning. That's part of that learning journey. This allows employees to achieve personal values, purpose, and growth. And how many times we've spoken about the importance of personal values and the alignment with the organizational values. And when that alignment is in place, growth for both individual and organization is a net outcome. It's about recognizing that talent includes personalized explorations that tap into emotion and a sense of individual purpose. These organizations place value on generating and celebrating learning moments that are often ignored. And I really like that particular point, because whenever have you heard about celebrating learning moments, Kevin? You're in the field. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often, Craig, but as you're speaking through it, essential learning, the meaningful learning, and accessible. What stands out for me is generally, and it's a general sort of association that you have with big corporates. They have big budgets, right? So it's usually it helps when you have a big budget to kind of have essential learning, meaningful and accessible learning.
Yeah,
right?
That's a good point.
But I want to challenge, small to medium enterprise to kind of go, but what about creating a culture of learning, right? Creating a Friday morning of a opportunity where everyone in the business is showcasing something, sharing something, so that it becomes an accessible point of learning, so that in that culture, whether you're a small, medium enterprise business, essentially part of your ongoing future and driving force and vision to what it is you're doing becomes a learning one. Because Craig, it's not like we recreating the wheel or saying anything new here.
Exactly.
That is an it's undeniable fact of the future of work. The question is, if you're listening to this as a business owner, or you're running 200 people, do you support learning actively in your environment? What does that look like, and how do you do it successfully, even if it's small?
And yeah, Kevin, and that's why that point 3, accessible learning, really is such an important point, because the organizations need to make a learning accessible. They need to provide a place, emphasize the learner experience through the journey, and it's beyond just providing a learning platform and content that they absorb and write a test on, but they actually involve learners in the design of those programs, and they adapt to learning according to each role, to the industry context and other personal criteria. This obviously does require L&D to participate, but it may require them to actually upskill their own teams to now start delivering design intuitive delivery systems that inspire and enable employees to learn anytime, anywhere, and inevitably learn more, Kevin.
Yeah, absolutely.
So moving to the next section here, it was about making people and performance your organizational mantra. And the report notes the following. So firstly, when employees work together, ignite passion and tap into purpose, individual, team, and company performance improve. Now, you may say that that's obvious, but yeah, it's often just so missed. And what companies have to do is adopt 2 internal streams when aiming to build these stronger performance cultures, Kevin. The first being instituting clear accountability mechanisms and improving employee experiences. And the next one is the goal is to create an enabling, inclusive culture that really has a performance edge. And it's about focusing on the strong performance management systems that consistently are reinforcing, rewarding, and the consequences that come with that. And the key statement or standout statement here is that people are disproportionately productive must be recognized. Otherwise, they may become demoralized and leave. And when the low productivity employees see few consequences, it's equally demoralizing to those who are responsible for greater output. And that is such an important paragraph for leaders to ensure that they understand. They need to be seeing who the performers are. They need to be rewarding or recognizing those performers. And that in turn will draw up the lower performance team members, and if the low performance team members aren't stepping in, those are the members that need to be exited out of the business.
Craig, but like just on that point that I mentioned earlier, that as much as we want the strategy and we want to, enable organizations and departments and, have that approach of, yeah, we absolutely want to educate and upskill our organizations. You're still dealing with humans, right? So when people are not recognized for what they bring to the table, it's quite quick and quite easy to demoralize an organization or a team. And it can happen, within a month. You can go from real success, doing really well, and suddenly you move the goalpost, and everyone's going, "What the hell, dude? Like last month we were doing what we were doing, and suddenly now the goalposts have moved." Right. So when you don't tap into the human needs of significance and certainty and growth, and kind of go, at the core fundamental of dealing with humans, it's easy to demoralize people when you don't recognize them.
And Kevin, that's why it's really important for organizations to define what those behaviors are that lead to strong business performance, and they have to communicate clearly so that employees know what they actually look like in practice. And the report notes that, again, more McKinsey research states that on organizational health shows a strong bond that links management practice and performance culture. And when that bond is in place, you're getting a stronger culture coming out on the other side. The key point to note there is how effectively leaders actually, to quote, run the place. And this is about how they make decisions, how they allocate their resources, how they're actually leading their teams. And all of this builds better organizational health, which in turn delivers, take note, 3 times total shareholder returns over unhealthy organizations, regardless of industry. And, that really stood out for me. 3 times total shareholder value, irrespective of the organization. But a closing statement on this point notes that high performance cultures also remove barriers to change and peel away layers of bureaucracy. And I really like that. And this includes inefficiency factors that increase disengagement and attrition, such as slow decision making, pointless meetings, and other impediments to getting things done. And here companies can definitely increase their productivity of their talent by streamlining those decision rights. Again, something many organizations are quite scared to do, and they really don't know how to implement and manage it. And it's about increasing the speed of decision making in many organizations, also a challenge. And this can also, be used as an opportunity to rewire the operating models and help in pushing decision making as close to the actions as possible through multiple people, and explicitly giving leaders the autonomy to deliver. And again, keywords: autonomy. How many organizations have not divested autonomy to the organizations? They're not putting the decision making close to the endpoint of the opportunity, and they're not putting the decisions in place to enable multiple people to contribute to those decision making processes, Kevin.
And I think just the word autonomy,
Yes.
it prefaces that you're empowering someone, right? If you're not giving someone the autonomy to deliver on something, on the expectations that you've spoken about, you're also taking away you're disempowering them completely, right? So the next step to kind of go is like, if you're placing this expectation on your leadership, and for them to run with it, part of that conversation and that boundary and that expectation is to empower them so that they are equipped with it, and skilled to be able to do it. And if they make mistakes, you kind of go, okay, cool, that was a mistake. But what I've noticed quite specifically is the onus is placed with the leader, but the moment someone gets something wrong, HR or the leadership team kind of like shrugs their hands and, well, it's like, you had autonomy, you should have made the right decisions, and you kind of go, well, that's not useful, So with the autonomy, if you're giving people autonomy to be able to make the decisions about an environment, make sure that you've empowered them to make those decisions.
100%, Kevin. So I want to pick up on the final point to the article or report, I should say, and this is that the end mantra here is about turning HR into the talent steward. And the report notes that in higher return talent systems, HR becomes a strategic partner with the C-suite, and they're there to ensure that the talent is a company-wide priority. And what's lovely is that HR transitions from a cost center to a genuine value creation center, which, a wonderful term, and it's something that we talk about often is, how can HR get more of a strategic role on or seat around the table? This exactly is it, ensuring that they're a company-wide priority, but they're actually a true value creation center. And when any division in any business demonstrates against that particular proposition, there's no reason why they're not going to be allowed to have a seat around the table. But Kevin, to support the 4 actions referenced at the beginning of our discussion, we note that HR can take a few steps to transform its own operating model, and these are essential. The first is that HR can establish a more agile operating model. Much like autonomy with decision making, they need to become more agile in their delivery, and that's delivery on its strategic role in the business. And to this extent, we note that the most effective HR organizations build agility into their operating models, typically with cross-functional flows to the work resources. The goal here is to focus on the user experience, offering strategic expertise and insights, and creating those operational and technical backbones that deliver across the organization, Kevin.
Craig, I just want to highlight, and and it's not an absolute truth, but it is an observation from working in learning and development, leadership, and HR. I specifically work in those environments. Careful that your HR doesn't become a process-driven department.
Tick box exercise, process-driven. Yeah.
Because usually, when they don't want to deal with anyone, when a leader doesn't want to deal with any, they send them to HR, and then there's a process of, we have to follow this process. And as you're saying, establish a more an operating model that is strategic role to the organization. And HR is not supposed to simply be running process. They're not supposed to only be, following the rules on how to do this next thing. Part of that role is for them to have a human connection and a human intervention as well, right? And I think people very often get that. HR departments and HR heads often get that very skewed to kind of go, as much as you are there about policy and procedure, part of that is a actual human element that's a foundational to why you do what you do. And it's a very blurry line, but it can be a really good strategic role for a business if they do it right.
And when they do it right, they become the human capital enablers.
Yes, exactly. And I made a note here as well, specifically, what does human capital look like? And, how do you define it, right? Because when you're looking at strategic roles of what HR does for a business, it's supposed to look at the capital that humans are offering your business, and so it's an awareness, but I don't think many people get it right.
Well, let's hope those that are listening take some of these points and use it. Yes. So the second step here, Kevin, is that HR can strengthen its data and people analytics capabilities, and then able to use that information continuously in real time. And it's really about sharing the insights that matter most to the business and the functional leaders, because when they're sharing that, they're being able to, in real time, help build that strategic role and support the strategic role across the business, Kevin. People analytics can help HR identify and reduce time inefficiencies by empowering staff to reduce the number of meetings they're involved in, particularly middle managers. We see this often, who really just, they spend their entire life in meetings and not doing. People analytics can also help find organizational problems and bottlenecks and solve them much more quickly. For instance, if there's a problem with staff attrition, identify where it's worse and what roles it's in. And then, whether it's long-standing employees that are leaving because they're not getting promoted or recognized, or that they need more flexibility to meet family obligations, etc. And really, it's about, there are many different problems in the organization, and each of those come with different solutions. So it isn't just that tick box exercise or the process where you think you know what the solution is at the end of the day.
Craig, but just to emphasize on, one of the very significant awarenesses that are being brought to the forefront around HR and human capital is the data, right? When you have the people analytics, like you mentioned, is like, what is the data saying about this environment? What is the, how do we scrutinize that data to understand where we're going, what we're doing, what's working, what's not? And I take work from home kind of the policies that need to change.
Yes.
Kind of work from home, work in the building, kind of that whole the data that supports that, to kind of go, okay, so do we have enough data to kind of go, okay, this is why we're making these policies. This is what is giving us the viewpoint of where we're going with what we're doing, and driving policies was. Because very often, data, people also don't know what to do with the data, right? So
very much so.
It's finding those experts, finding the people who can scrutinize it well enough to kind of drive the vision of what's the next steps.
So you might recall I mentioned to you a little while ago, I was having a chat with one of the senior engineers at Microsoft, and I just asked him, particularly around the talent conversation, what are the roles that Microsoft are looking for most in the evolution of the future and AI and things like that. And this gent commented on two particular roles. And the first is AI engineers. But the second one talks exactly to your point, is data analysts. Yeah. Every single one of the countries that Microsoft is represented in is looking for AI engineers and data analysts. And when you understand the data, you're able to move the business forward in the right way, Kevin. But the third and final step is that HR plays an essential role in connecting the talent strategy to the organization's overall business strategy. And that's why, if you look at my previous adage, marketing is the sales enabler. In this instance, HR is the human capital enabler, and they all contribute to that overall business strategy. And a simple example is it can ensure that the strategic workforce planning is integrated with financial planning, not walled off as an exercise only for HR. But by having HR work in tandem with finance, the organization has a much higher visibility into costs, and it can definitely pursue a significant better annual planning around key talent and key resources and key technologies. And this is something that I've definitely seen working incredibly well with the companies that I've worked with, particularly around the employee brand EVP proposition, Kevin.
Yeah, Craig, it reminds me, like, that specific conversation is, we've had a number of times already, right? And it's kind of going, what is that strategic partner, and what is that? How does, from the marketing? One of the points you also mentioned before, and we've also touched on, is who's sitting at the table, and yes, how do they become part of that strategic role? So absolutely, it's a vital part of the organization.
So I want to end the conversation by quoting the following excerpt from the report, and it's an important one that just really encapsulates it so succinctly. It says, an organization that views its employees as its most important resource can maximize its return on talent by following a holistic strategy with HR in the driver's seat, analytics-backed hiring, continuous learning, and a high-performance culture make people feel supported, energized, and productive. This integrated talent approach draws people in and keeps employees satisfied, boosting organizational performance along the way.
Yeah, I love that. And it makes me think that I've just recently spoken to someone who has had a very negative experience around how retaining good talent is not an option for this organization. And it sort of speaks to that sentiment of people don't leave organizations, they leave people, right?
Yeah.
When we come back at that human element and put HR in the driver's seat and look at what are the analytics, how is that continuous learning process? People want to, very many people want to build careers, right? And if they know that there's succession planning and there's a plan for them, they'll stay. They'll have a good reason to stay.
Yep.
But if they don't, they won't, right?
Correct.
Craig, I love this. Increasing your return on talent, the moves and metrics that matter. Guys, if you want to check that out, we chatted 2 shows about this already. And so go and check out the previous one and today's show to get all the insights from that. Craig, so as we end today's show, the quote for the day is, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to that continue that counts. And that's Winston Churchill.
Yeah, gosh, good old Winston. Yeah, I do like that.
Craig, thank you so much, guys. If you want to check it out, the Lunchtime series happens every Wednesday and Thursday. Please remember to like and share, and tune in with Craig and myself every week. Craig, have a fantastic week. I'll chat to you about the rugby next time.
Most definitely. Thanks, Kevin. Have a good week ahead. Ciao.